Welcome in everybody to another episode of UFL Tonight. Can you believe it? We're already over halfway through the UFL season after last night's Derby Classic. Now, we'll be covering that game, of course, but we still have to cover all the games in Week 5 on this week's Rapid Recap. And we started the weekend off on Friday night in good old Protective Stadium in Birmingham, Alabama, with AJ McCarron and the Stallions needing to do at least something after being shut out in their home opener. Things fared a bit better, but still not the best. Dorian Thompson-Robinson got his first start as a Stallion, and he threw for over 300 yards and a couple touchdowns, with a couple interceptions as well. But even though Birmingham looked slightly improved offensively, their defense got ran over by this defender's team. Valladay had 2 touchdowns on the ground, Teamu had 4 through the air, as the defenders take care of business easily 45-28, as the Birmingham Stallions dropped to 1-4 on the season. Then down in Orlando, the 4-0 Storm prepared to take on the Battlehawks. Of course, Anthony Becht, head coach of the Orlando Storm, formerly of the St. Louis Battlehawks, he was prepared, he was ready. His old team coming into his new house, he was ready to defend it, but things did not turn out that way. We watched those dreams just fade and fade as St. Louis puts up a touchdown, another touchdown, and look at that catch from James Bostic too. What an absolute dog. Then a field goal and another field goal, putting up 18 unanswered points going into half. And then opening up the third quarter, Harrison Frost adds another touchdown as the Battlehawks lead 25-0. Keep in mind, this is the team that just forced the first ever shutout in regular season UFL history. And now, just a couple weeks later, they are being shut out there at home 25-0. Eventually, though, things got back to clicking for Orlando with their Elijahs, both Badger and Dotson, finding their way home for a touchdown and another field goal, but it was just too deep a hole to climb out of as the Battlehawks still win 25-17 to hand the Orlando Storm their first loss of the season. Now, we'll cover this later in Baker's Best Bets, but I called this last week. I knew that, Giants in this league are always quick to fall. I can see a lot of 5-5 teams this year. Continuing on the weekend, we moved down to Houston where they took on the Columbus Aviators, kind of a prequel to tonight's game, except tonight's game will be taking place in Columbus. This one took place in Houston. And down in Houston, things started off pretty quick for the Gamblers, with Jalen White punching it in for 6 on their first drive. Then they forced a Columbus 3-and-out to get the ball back, traveled all the way down the field for Nolan Henderson to put the team on his back, and dives in for the touchdown, and they get an extra point as the Gamblers were up 14-0. But the Aviators decided to fight back as Jalen McClendon runs in for his own touchdown. Then on the following drive, Kevin Sumlin ices his own kicker, leading to a John Hoyland miss from 56, giving the Aviators great field position, which they go and capitalize on for a Toa Tower touchdown. And this game would go into half 14-13. Now, going into half 14-13, you'd think this would be a really exciting game, prepping for an amazing finish, but we saw pretty much all the scoring for this game in the first half. In fact, the only other score would be kind of at the top of the fourth quarter when John Hoyland just hits a little 23-yard field goal as the Gamblers win 17-13. In probably the most boring game of the week. It was starting to look really good, but come on, guys. You got to finish strong. 3 points total in the second half. That's a snooze fest. And if you want to talk about putting points on the board, man, the final game of the weekend was just that. The Louisville Kings took on the Dallas Renegades, this time right there in Dallas at Toyota Stadium. And as a Renegades fan, this one was just painful. The final Renegades home game, first one since trading away Luis Perez, and Austin Reed throws 4 interceptions, 2 of those being pick sixes before being benched for wide receiver Greg Ward. Yes, he was benched at quarterback to put in a wide receiver. They didn't even put in their backup quarterback Luke Lane, and they just skipped past him. And Rick Neuheisel put in wide receiver Greg Ward Jr., who granted played quarterback for the Houston Cougars back in 2016, but hasn't since then. And hey, to his credit, looked pretty solid. He went 6 for 7 and found Emmanuel Butler on a pretty deep touchdown as time expired. So hey, we may see the true QB2 there in Dallas be wide receiver Greg Ward Jr. But on a positive note, this Louisville fan base absolutely showed out. Chandler Rogers is a Texan native, so he got his first win right here in his home state as a professional starter, and they all showed out. They had their crowns, their derby hats, their cloaks, pretty much everything repping the Kings there. And at one point, they were chanting defense louder than anything else in the building. So shout out to the Kings fans that made the trip. And you guys got to see a good one because in the end, the Kings won 47-25. Yes, 47 points, a UFL regular season record. So that rounded out this weekend's games. But as always, we have our players of the week. Now it was announced that in back-to-back weeks, our offensive player of the week is DC Defenders quarterback Jordan Ta'amu. Ta'amu, of course, coming off that amazing 4-touchdown performance against Birmingham, definitely deserves it here in back-to-back weeks. Then our defensive player of the week is Tony Fields II. Now, Tony Fields is an absolute dog and just absolutely lit it up in that game against the Gamblers. If it wasn't for him, that game would not have been close. And special teams player of the week is Quindell Johnson, the safety for the Louisville Kings. That wraps up all of our top players of the week. Now let's look into some of the biggest news around the league heading into week 6. Of course, last night was the Derby Classic right there in Louisville with the Louisville Kings taking on the St. Louis Battlehawks. Now, UFL co-owner Mike Rapoli was, of course, in attendance. They're making it a whole big thing this weekend. He has the favorite in the Kentucky Derby with Renegade. He was there giving a press conference at the stables the morning of the game, encouraging everybody to come out, handing out free tickets, speaking with members of the UFL community. Shout out the Kings Corner. Make sure you check out their interview with UFL co-owner Mike Rapoli. And this game, from an atmosphere perspective, was just absolutely amazing. That Louisville crowd showed out. They were really engaged and into the game, and they're building a very unique and special culture, which is just really awesome to see leading up to this weekend's Kentucky Derby. And even though it's Kentucky Derby weekend, sadly in this game, you would not see much of Derby, as early in the first quarter, Tanner Brown hits on a 40-yard field goal as the Kings tack on 3 points, and those would be their only points of the game. All in all, not the best game from either side, as St. Louis would take this one 16-3 thanks to a couple touchdowns by McBride and Gary Jennings Jr. But the atmosphere, like I said, is just absolutely fantastic. And since Mike Rapoli is such a huge figure in horse racing, it makes this game just that much more special. Another top headline this week after the NFL draft was Diego Pavia, the Vanderbilt quarterback, Heisman finalist, went undrafted in the 2026 NFL draft. And a lot of NFL analysts, including Barstool Sports' Pat McAfee, thought the UFL would be the best fit for him. And Pat, in fact, put out an entire long tweet about it, how he thinks that the UFL should throw him a lot of money and it would boost popularity for both him and the league. And, well, my UFL co-owner Mike Rapoli quickly responded, hopping on the Pat McAfee show to kind of talk it out, talk about Diego Pavia. Mike Rapoli said that he'd start him this weekend, that he would love to have him. He has since signed an undrafted free agent deal with the Baltimore Ravens, so at least this year we won't see him, but very interesting conversation that a lot of people have brought up. I personally think that it would be a great fit for him. I would welcome Diego Pavia into the league, but a lot of these people saying that the UFL should throw him a ton of money, I think just doesn't quite match. I think one of the beauties of the UFL is having everybody on that same level with that same chip on their shoulder. I am not really much in the group of let's spend extra to acquire better talent, because I think that kind of sends the wrong message to the talent that you already have. And we've had some really talented players in the UFL. Like I said, we had Max Duggan, which we talk about Diego Pavia as a Heisman finalist. Max Duggan was a Heisman runner-up. I know it's been made well aware to me that Pavia has a lot more media popularity. I guess I just grew up in DFW, so Max Duggan was everywhere around here. But I just don't think that one single player is going to bring that return on investment that we're so much looking forward to. Like, we've seen that with guys like Paxton Lynch, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, Matt Corral. We've had some big name quarterbacks in this league. AJ McCarron too. He's even still coaching. It's just, I think the big names are great and people do recognize them, but what brings people in is the talent that comes out of this league and succeeds, like the Brandon Aubreys, the Jake Bates. That's what puts the UFL on the map, the Cavante Turpins. So I don't think we need to be spending money to acquire big names. I think we need to be focused on player development to get big names coming out. And while all the top kind of news aside, let's take a look at our standings heading into tonight's game. We have the DC Defenders in first at 4-1, the Orlando Storm in second at 4-1 as well. The St. Louis Battlehawks move all the way up to third at 4-2. Dallas slips down after dropping a couple to 3-2. Louisville down to 2-4. The Gamblers at 2-3. The Aviators at 1-4, and then the Stallions also at 1-4. So tonight's game between numbers 6 and 7. Let's see if they can get it done. So those were the standings, but how do they match up against our weekly UFL Tonight power rankings? Well, not well, because at number 8, I have the home team of tonight's game, the Columbus Aviators. And just when you think they have things figured out, they ran the ball well against Dallas. They don't against Houston, which Houston has one of the worst run defenses in the league. They let DC just kind of run all over them. And just overall, there hasn't been anything that's made me want to bet on this Columbus Aviators team. Jalen McClendon's been careless with the football, been fumbling it all over the place. That really needs to stop. And overall, there's just nothing where I see them succeeding better than the average team at. So right now, they're just at number 8 for me. Moving on to number 7, things looked a little bit better last week, and I want to give them the benefit of the doubt with Dorian Thompson-Robinson only having a few days to prepare. But there's just so many concerns when it comes to this Birmingham Stallions team. I can't put them anywhere above number 7 right now, so that's where I have them in my rankings. And at number 6, come on, guys. How is it Derby week and the Louisville Kings only scored 3 points with 1 field goal in the first quarter? Like, you got to do better than that. There was a whole week designed for you to get the win. You put up 47 points against the Renegades last week when you were away, and then now you're at home with a game designed all about you with the Kentucky Derby on Saturday with Mike Rapoli in attendance. You put up 3. No, we're not doing that. You're dropping all the way down to number 6 in my power rankings. And at number 5, I'm moving this team down just because they lost so badly to this bad Louisville Kings team. I'm moving my Dallas Renegades all the way down to number 5. I think we'll bounce back. I think we'll get things together, but Rick, we got to get a QB3, okay? I love Greg Ward. He's a great wide receiver. He's even a great pinch emergency quarterback, but we need a real quarterback. You can roster 3 quarterbacks in this league and a wide receiver, so we can have everybody on the roster. Everybody's having a great time, but for the love of God, we cannot have Greg Ward Jr. be our true QB2 and get Luke some reps, man. Until you get Luke some reps, you're being dropped down on my power rankings. Which that means at number 4, yes, number 4, I have one of the teams that's playing tonight. They won this matchup last week. I have the Houston Gamblers. A lot of people have been down on the Gamblers, and I get it. Their defense has not been the best. They've been very inconsistent, but what they've been doing is somehow winning games. They play just, I wouldn't even say clean, but they somehow play efficient enough football to get the job done. And that's all that matters at the end of the day. An ugly win is still a win. They've been able to pile on wins, and kind of that's all that matters. If they can get hot towards the end, they get their quarterbacks truly healthy. We saw Nolan Henderson have like a broken finger. He's still diving into the end zone. That's the type of just strength, discipline, and motivation that I'm looking for. And that's a team that will succeed in the United Bowl here in June. And number 3, man, the big giant has fallen. The Orlando Storm were looking so good, starting off 4-0 in the first month of UFL action. They suffered their first loss, and man, it was a brutal loss at home against St. Louis. Anthony Beck against his own team just, man, shut down, allowed 25 unanswered points. This is where, like, typically I would put them at 1 or 2, but I gotta put them at number 3 because the team I have above them is the St. Louis Battlehawks that just put belt to ass against the Storm. And then, hey, they beat the Louisville Kings last night. They're surging right now in the standings. They're surging in my power rankings. They're all the way up at number 2. And then number 1, I'm wearing their shirt, although keep in mind, this is the shirt of the 2023 XFL Championship where the Renegades beat the Defenders. But this year, I have the Defenders number 1 in my power rankings. They look like the strongest team in the league. And honestly, as a Renegades fan, I'm excited to play them this weekend because I believe it's a great test to see if the Renegades can get back on their A game. And if they can beat DC, it tells me that they are truly legitimate and the past couple weeks have just kind of been a fluke. So that's all of our game recaps, news, power rankings, and we introduced this segment a couple weeks ago. We find those takes that just age poorly, those slip ups, those mistakes, and anything that makes you say, man, thank God I did not say that. It is time for this week's Clipped.
Sit down, be humble. Sit down, be humble. Sit down, be humble.
And first up on Clipped, we have the St. Louis Battlehawks admin. Where are you? During the game this past weekend, they posted this unbelievable rush from Keyshawn Banks, where Keyshawn Banks made a good swim move and got the quarterback hurry and just absolutely slammed Harrison Frost. The only issue is Keyshawn Banks does not play for the St. Louis Battlehawks. They posted an Orlando Storm highlight, and I recorded this over an hour after it was posted. So they were just giving free promo to the Orlando Storm for hitting their quarterback for over an hour. I haven't checked to see if it's still up. You guys still can, but what were you thinking? That is 100% going unclipped. And next up on Clipped, for the second week in a row, I have to put myself. So before the Renegades Kings game, I went on the Kings Corner podcast and I was feeling myself. I was feeling the Renegades, so I was talking some trash, and well, I'll just play the clip.
Yeah, I think Chandler's going to get in there. Gears just going to start turning. We throw up a little 40 bomb.
Whoa.
Something slight.
I
believe it.
I will personally buy a piece of Kings merchandise if they drop a 40 bomb on us. And I'll go a step further. I'll wear it on the next episode of UFL Tonight after it comes in. So yes, being one of the worst scoring teams in the entire league for the whole season, the Louisville Kings managed to put up 47 points, partially due to Austin Reed's 2 pick sixes. So I currently have an order on the way from the Kings Corner shop. Highly recommend you check those guys out. And like I said, they had an interview with UFL co-owner Mike Rapoli, the big one, as big as it gets. Go show them some love. Love those guys. And finally on Clipped, man, we have Oklahoma City coming to the UFL in 2028. And Mike Rapoli has already been asking for some name suggestions. I've seen them be active on socials too, asking about names. But Rapoli went on the Pat McAfee show, and he had an interesting name suggestion for the Oklahoma City UFL franchise.
What are the Oklahoma City team name? What's their name?
I don't have it now. But if you guys
Tornadoes,
Lightning.
I was thinking the
Basketball.
Dickheads.
that was
Okay, not bad.
that's pretty good too.
That's not bad.
I love it. That was actually my suggestion too. Being a fan from Dallas-Fort Worth, I think the Oklahoma City team should also be named the Oklahoma City Dickheads. And in fact, I actually know the perfect guy to have coach them. So, hey, UFL, if you're trying to make some moves, hit me up. Oklahoma City Dickheads, I can build you out a roster. So that's all for this week's Clipped. Make sure you stick around because now it is time for our weekly hot topic.
Who said I can't wear my Converse with my dress? Well, baby, if that's just me.
Welcome back to Hot Topic on UFL Tonight, where you give us your hot topics and we react. We start off with our good friend Chris Tisdale, who says that Jack Plummer is not a top 3 quarterback in the league. I agree. Now, don't get me wrong. I like Jack Plummer. I think he's a very efficient quarterback, but I think trading away Dorian Thompson-Robinson is going to come back to bite the Orlando Storm. Jack Plummer is very efficient. He is a great game manager. He got the team to 4-0. They struggled a lot in week 5, and I think they'll bounce back a bit, but I think that Dorian Thompson-Robinson gave you some mobility that Plummer doesn't have. Now, Plummer has wheels, but he is nowhere near as mobile as Dorian Thompson-Robinson. I don't think he's as much of a, great passer as a Jordan Teamu or a Luis Perez per se. So, yeah, I wouldn't go as far as to name him a top 3 quarterback in this league. He's, comparatively to the amount of games he's played and the amount of games he's won, he's a top 3 quarterback, but wins aren't everything. If you actually kind of peel back the layers, look at his play, he's had a lot of interceptions called back, kind of a lot of favorable calls go his way. And not to say anything bad about him, I think he's playing a good, efficient game. I think it's just that, though. It's good and efficient, but it's not great and, league-breaking. Up next, we have Logan Graffia, who says the UFL needs to expand into New Orleans instead of NYC, Albuquerque, or anywhere else that Rapoli mentioned on Pat McAfee. Yes, Rapoli went on Pat McAfee, immediately started talking expansion. I know that's what gets people talking. I typically prefer to focus on the football mid-year, but looking at New Orleans now, typically I'd agree. I like New Orleans as an eventual UFL option, but if they're adding a team already in Oklahoma City, they have a team in Birmingham, they've had a team in Memphis, they have teams in Dallas, Houston, Louisville, like New York or Albuquerque allows them to get a whole region that they're not currently already serving. I feel like the New Orleans area can still kind of be served by that Birmingham market a little bit, um, which I guess keeps travel costs down. But I think we're at a point in time where Rapoli, I wouldn't say cares less, but definitely the league itself cares less about the travel costs than years prior. So I wouldn't necessarily say a New York team or an Albuquerque team, but I could definitely see a Northeast Coast, West Coast team being one of the plays for 2028. And then we have Naruto, who says the first team that is not owned by the UFL should be the New Jersey Red Bulls, owned by Red Bull. So another Northeast team. This one, New Jersey, which I think if they're going to New York, they got to actually go to New York. No more football teams in New Jersey, okay? New Jersey has too many football teams not named New Jersey. But the biggest problem I have with this one is the New Jersey Red Bulls, owned by Red Bull. Are you talking about another energy drink company? I only drink Zoa Energy, my guy. Zoa Energy, Body Armor, Vitamin Water, Smart Water, Coca-Cola, proud sponsor of the Dallas Renegades. Dr. Pepper, proud sponsor of the St. Louis Battlehawks. Come on, guys. We're not doing Red Bull here, okay? That's the worst thing I've ever had submitted on Hot Topic, okay? Now, if they're like the Zoa Zebras, yeah. Let's put a UFL team in Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe Zoa Zebras. That's my UFL energy drink sponsored team right there. All right, so those were all the community's hot takes, but let's see what we all agree on in our weekly survey says. Make sure to follow along on X at UFL Tonight, as we'll post weekly polls for you to participate in. As always, the first poll for next week's episode will launch right around kickoff. And starting off with poll 1, we asked y'all who you're taking in the Derby Classic, the St. Louis Battlehawks or the Louisville Kings. And man, this one was way closer than the game, but the general public knew what was gonna happen. 53% of you picked the Battlehawks over the Kings, with the Kings only having 47%. And of course, the Battlehawks took home the dub. Our next and final survey this week, we asked you guys about the Friday night game. We get a rematch of the Aviators versus the Gamblers. And even though the Aviators dropped last week, it looks like the general public is still putting their money on them. 71% picking the Aviators, with only 29% picking Houston to go back to back. I guess you're going to find out here in a bit, but I'm part of that group of people which thinks Houston's going to go back to back. So that was all for our weekly survey says, but it is time to showcase some of the best content in the UFL community on our weekly community spotlight. And first off, this game is in Columbus, so I thought we'd feature some amazing pictures from the flight deck from their last home game. And man, this Columbus crowd just brings that energy every single week. I love it. Viva la Plains. I can't wait to see the flight deck bumping all night tonight. Next up, we have UFL reporter Anthony Miller, my good buddy, Renegades fan. Man, look at his hat collection. He bought one for every single team, plus the league, doing more than myself. I love it, man. Keep doing you. And finally, shout out to the Kings guard for tagging us and showing us his view last night at the Derby Classic there in Louisville of Lynn Family Stadium. What a beautiful stadium. What a great crowd. And even though it didn't go your way, thank you for showing up and getting your tickets. Now, this week we have a very special interview. Our guest lost their UFL team, but did not lose their passion for the league. This is Brahma Babe. She has been to pretty much every single UFL stadium, or has plans to go to every single UFL stadium, including tonight in Columbus. She'll be there at the Columbus-Houston game. She was at the Houston home opener, the DC home opener. She was on stage with Wale. Just absolute craziness. Take a look at our conversation. I know those first couple weeks there, you also got to witness some awesome concert series as well. You were front center stage for both Ludacris and Wale actually brought you up on stage. What was that experience like? Because I think you're the only person in the world who can say I was front and center at the Ludacris Gamblers concert and then the Wale DC Defenders concert.
It was crazy because it was something that we weren't expecting. We were approached in Houston and asked to come and meet at a certain area at halftime, and we showed up, and then they were like, "Oh, you're here for the Ludacris concert," and I was like, "Well, I guess so." So they put us on the side, which was really fun, and you can't go wrong with Ludacris. The music's great, and I love to dance. I have a former background, or if you could say, back in the day, I was a cheerleader and I coached competitive cheer and dance for years. So you put me around music, I
You're in
can't
your
stand still.
element. Yeah, that's
Exactly,
awesome.
exactly. Fast forward to DC, kind of the same thing happened. They were like, "Hey, halftime, come down." We went down, and they were like, "Come over to the side." This time we didn't have the barricades like we did with Ludacris, and again, jamming out to the music, having a great time, feeling the beats, and Wale comes over, grabs my hand, and the next thing I know, I'm kind of just doing the solo act, and it was really incredible. I mean, it was really a special experience. It's something I haven't done, haven't experienced with the UFL in the past because we just haven't had these types of shows. Um, so it was, again, quick thinking and putting my ex cheerleader skills in motion, I guess. So, but it was incredible, and definitely memories that will travel with me for forever.
What have you noticed so far going up to all these games in 2026 versus kind of years past?
There's some really good things. Obviously, the league has changed. Not only some of the markets, but just the environment and kind of what they're wanting to do. The stadiums are very different. I have to admit, I've never been to an FC game, so the FC stadiums have been something new for me to experience, which I do like. I think they're pretty easy thus far to navigate. I think you're closer to things, whether it's concession, things like that. The barriers, like in Orlando, are very short, so you're actually shorter and lower to the field, which is kind of unique versus a traditional football stadium, whether it be NFL, college, or whatever. So I think the FC stadiums have been a really interesting experience, and I don't think it's a bad thing. I think having all of the teams, which this is just a personal thing, having a hype squad has been great. I love seeing that and them utilize, whether it's a dance background or more of your traditional cheer background. So that's been great.
I guess so far, what are your plans for the rest of the season? How many games do you intend to go to total for 2026? And then so far, what would you say is your number one UFL spot?
So I am going 12 for 12 this year. So I'm going to hit
Hey,
all 10 regular season games. I don't know which, obviously, we'll figure out with playoffs. If there's a way that I could potentially do both playoff games, then maybe I don't know. I'll be honest. Going to 5 home games and then 5 away games, a playoff game in a championship, is a little different than going 12 games that are on the road every weekend. I'm already set up for the ship.
let's go. The United Bowl, which, by the way, this will
Yes.
be airing on Friday, May 1st. So tickets would have dropped this morning. So make sure to get your tickets now.
Yes,
That'll be
and I'm
exciting.
excited about that because it is actually the day after my birthday. So I am going to be having a United Bowl DC Brahma
That
Bay birthday.
that's awesome. That'll be incredible.
Slight little thanks and props to Brahma Bro, which is my husband. He is a pilot for Delta. So uh,
Ah,
it helps. Now I will say it's not as easy as just getting the tickets and going. We do a lot of standby, and so that means getting up and getting to the airport for like a 5, 6 o'clock in the morning flight. If we can't get onto that one, then we might have to wait and go. Same thing coming home. We don't, so
wow. So you're either in an airport, in a UFL stadium, or at a hotel, which is sometimes the airport. That
yes,
is
yes,
incredible.
exactly. And some people do their summer, traveling, and they take vacay during the summer. Mike and I, our vacay is spring league and in the UFL from June, or March to June.
So thank you to Brahma Babe for joining the show. Everybody go check her out, show her some love. If you see her there in the stadium on game day, grab a picture, say hi. You'll likely see her at any and every game. And I know she'll be at the United Bowl celebrating her birthday. So love to see it. Now, moving on with the show, we move on to our Baker's Best Bets. And we start off Baker's best bets by first looking at last week. So last week we came to you with 3 bets. DC, Birmingham over 44.5, St. Louis +3, and Houston +3.5. And guys, I'm proud to report we have a jackpot. We went 3 for 3 last week. That DC Birmingham game was over 44.5. St. Louis won that game. Houston won that game. It cleared easily, no questions asked. Hopefully we can roll it into this week. So looking at this week's lines, we start off Columbus is the 3-point favorite tonight against Houston, the line being 45.5. Then tomorrow we have DC Dallas. DC coming into this one as a 4.5-point favorite with the highest total of the week, 49.5. Then on Sunday we have the Orlando Storm, 4.5-point favorites over Birmingham with that total at 44.5. Now, my picks this week, I did it last week. I'm doing it again this week. I'm taking Houston +3 over Columbus. They got the win last week. I know we're at home in Columbus, but come on, guys. Like, Houston just looks like they're the better team. They literally beat them last week. I think +3 is just the play that makes sense here. Even if it doesn't end up working out on paper, it just makes a great deal of sense. And it worked out a couple weeks ago when I was like, hey, on paper, this one just seems too good to be true with the Orlando Storm, and the Orlando Storm ended up winning that game against the Birmingham Stallions. My second pick is going to be that DC Dallas game under 49.5. And I know what you're saying. These DC Dallas matchups are always high octane, high score matchups. But keep in mind, we don't have Luis Perez against Jordan Teamu anymore. We don't know what we're going to see. And I feel like with this game, everybody and their mom is expecting a high scoring matchup. Even Vegas putting this game at 49.5, over 4 points higher than any other game. But I just think when everyone's going one way, be the salmon swimming upstream. So I'm going to go against the general public. I'm taking the under on this game. I may be a madman, but hey, we don't go for the easy bets here. Sometimes you got to go for the long shot and best bets if you want to get some good odds. And then my final pick of the week is going to be Birmingham Orlando over 44.5. Now, I know it did not go this way last time these two teams met, but Birmingham is just desperate to get that offense going. They got to go in a little bit with Dorian Thompson-Robinson only having a few days to prepare. Now he has a full week. They're playing Orlando again. Dorian Thompson-Robinson playing his former team. And plus, these Stallions are pissed that they got blown out, shut out at home against this squad. Of course, Anthony Becht and McCarron have their own history. At some point, we have to get a high-scoring matchup out of these two. I think this is where we get it kind of past that mid-year point in the season. So those were all of our best bets. As always, please bet responsibly. Only bet what you can afford. And now we move on. And before I let you go, we got to go and finish out week 5. So every week here on UFL Tonight, we have our Friday top 5. Coming up here at number 5, we have Greg Ward Jr., yes, the wide receiver and at quarterback for the Renegades. He launches a deep pass to Emmanuel Butler as time expires. Man, what an arm on that wide receiver, Renegades QB2. Next up, late in the fourth quarter, Jalen McClendon scrambling. He makes it 16 yards, and then Asante forces the fumble. Perotti recovers it at the Houston 6, and this pretty much seals the game as the Houston Gamblers win 17-13. Coming in at number 3, we have the Battlehawks punting, and the Orlando Storm block it. Ryan Sanborn's punt blocked, going out at the St. Louis 1-yard line, and then on the very next snap, the Orlando Storm score the touchdown, showing you how valuable special teams is. Coming in at number 2, we have Austin Reed's pass picked off by Bryce Hall, who runs it all the way back for a pick 6. The first pick 6 of the day for Austin Reed. He would go on to throw 4 interceptions before the Louisville Kings would win 47-25. And then at number 1, keep in mind this is right after a Birmingham fumble where DC picked up the ball. We have Jordan Teamu, who scrambles, finds Ty Scott behind the line of scrimmage, and he just runs it all the way downfield, outrunning that Birmingham defense for a 45-yard touchdown to pretty much put this game out of reach. A quick strike as the defenders would go on to win. So that was our weekly Friday top 5. Now it's time for us to be fully in week 6. Okay, we already had the Derby Classic last night, but it's time for my game prediction of this week's Houston Gamblers versus Columbus Aviators matchup. Now, The Houston Gamblers won last week, and I think sadly it's going to be that same result. Hopefully, we can get a full 4 quarters of action and not just an exciting first half and then a snooze fest of a second half. But I'm taking Houston to win this one 22-19. So that's all of our game predictions, all of our news, and all of our recap this week. Thank you so much for tuning in. Can't believe we're over halfway through the UFL season. Looking forward to finish out that second half right here on UFL Tonight every Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern.